Losing to win. Why you trust the wrong people, and how to stop. Before we begin, I remind you that this is a reflective essay, not an academic document or a source of information. Its intention is to invite reflection. An interesting offer. If someone approached you and pointed to a person whose trustworthiness you couldn't determine, and said, "For X price, I can guarantee whether they're trustworthy or not. 100% guaranteed." Would you pay the price? The answer to this hypothetical situation depends greatly on the value you assign to the idea of trust. If trust is important, perhaps it's worth paying the price, even if it's high. Conversely, if you believe trust is something we should demand from everyone, the price might seem like a scam attempt. Perhaps it's time we start questioning the idea of trust and its true place in reality. The concept of trust. We often confuse this term with certainty. Certainty is the absolute assurance that an event will occur unequivocally. For example, if I toss a coin into the air under normal conditions on Earth, I'm certain it will fall to the ground and show heads or tails, not some strange third symbol. Trust is an approximation of certainty in events where failures or unforeseen circumstances can occur. For instance, if someone is responsible and I ask them for something by appealing to their sense of responsibility, I trust they'll attend to my request. However, I cannot be certain my request will be fulfilled if this person has an accident, dies, or is forced to prioritize another request over mine, yet they remain trustworthy. Trust is betting that the most probable event will occur. Applied to people, this means expecting that people will say, act, and or do what is considered most likely. Demanding trust is possibly the most harmful practice a person can inflict on themselves and others. It's a conditioning we use to obtain certainty about our reality when, in fact, it denies reality by not accepting that other factors can affect the outcome. Thinking something might go wrong is exhausting because it requires extra work to mitigate situations that haven't occurred before. We want to see the world with trust because it's simpler than anticipating everything that could go wrong. We save resources and negative emotions. And finally, we reach the point we wanted to make: we save resources and negative emotions. This phrase implies that resources will be used and emotions will be expressed, but there's no evidence they actually affect the outcome. We could simply let things take their course, and most likely, what has the highest probability of happening will happen. The investment of resources and emotions seems more like an expense or a loss. Humanity detests losses. Avoiding loss. The idea of avoiding losses is so strong that behavioral techniques are based on it. For example, if we want to reinforce positive behavior, we do so under the threat of a physical loss. The clearest example is a parent telling their child, "If you don't get good grades, you won't go to the fair," or the typical, "If you don't behave well, Santa Claus won't bring you gifts." However, losses are part of reality, whether we like or accept them. False ideas about trust and losses. There are two false ideas about these concepts. Trust should exist by default. Normally, we shouldn't experience losses. These ideas lead to value judgments that label it as bad when these ideas don't manifest in reality, and this contrast generates negative emotions and discomfort. The way to solve this dilemma is simply to accept reality: losses occur, and trust is not something that comes naturally but a pattern we perceive in reality. We must recognize and distance ourselves from these value judgments to avoid discomfort and truly observe the benefits and problems that a loss can cause. Once we accept that a loss is possible in reality, we can consider: if a loss can be prevented, is it worth the effort to prevent it? Do I accept the responsibility and implications of not trying to mitigate it? Do I prevent it based on the resources I have available? If a loss is inevitable, do I know how it will affect me? How do I prepare for it? I'll share something personal. I did something very unusual in my life. Even when my parents were alive, I realized they wouldn't be alive forever. I began the grieving process for their loss 10 years before they died. At a time when both were healthy and death wasn't looming in our lives. This decision allowed me to face their loss when it occurred and understand how to overcome the suffering. All I did was accept the reality that they would leave someday. Loss is investment. An idea that has helped me incorporate the concept of loss into reality is to see it as an unwanted investment that ultimately offers something. For example, a person wants to get home quickly and decides to take a shortcut through a street that looks unsafe. From the shadows, a robber appears, threatens them, and steals their wallet. Upon leaving the unsafe street, this person can choose between two thoughts. I've just been robbed, had a horrible experience, and just lost my wallet with $50. Or, I've just confirmed this street is unsafe, and it only cost me a scare and $50 to find out. Neither thought denies the reality that a loss exists or that it was an unpleasant experience, but the way the loss is interpreted changes how it feels. The second thought offers a perception of exchange: I lost $50, but now I'm wiser and more experienced. The loss of trust. Now let's talk about something more mundane. When trust is really lost in a person, institution, product, etc. This process begins when we can observe changes in patterns. A product's quality decreases, the company we trust starts acting suspiciously, and the person we trust begins to fail or shows signs they won't fulfill their commitments. What was once an almost sure bet increases in risk, and when the risk level becomes unacceptable, that's when we can truly say trust has been lost. We often perceive this loss of trust as a betrayal, and depending on the circumstance, it may or may not actually be one. What should we do when trust no longer exists? The answer depends greatly on the relationship we establish with what has disappointed us. Some of the most common actions are: demand proof and guarantees about commitments. Negotiate to understand the changes in trust levels and make new commitments with different trust levels. Discard the option for an alternative, for a more reliable option. Recovering trust. Trust is not something that should be given easily, it should be established through observation of objective patterns. And once lost, trust must be demonstrated equally with objective patterns that it deserves. This is particularly difficult, especially when talking about interpersonal relationships where subjectivity reigns. How many times have we heard of someone in a toxic relationship demanding trust? What does the toxic partner have to establish this bond of trust? The way they speak? The way they make the person feel? Promises to fulfill their commitments? All these indicators are subjective. And yet trust is offered, not because these are sufficient indicators, but because of the false idea that trust should exist by default, because otherwise, I'll have to use material or emotional resources to deal with reality. To truly give trust again to someone who has disappointed us, we must focus on objective aspects that can be counted and demonstrated. It's not about promising not to do it again but demonstrating that it won't be done again through constancy and commitment. Remember, the power is yours.